the kind of conversation that they had, it was not a delicate, tender, loving conversation. It was at times very brutal and scathing. His friends were truthfully off track. But Job's friends are well-intentioned. So I'd like to say this, is that friends sometimes behave differently when you're going through something. It's really heavy, but it's okay. They might be a little bit more bold and direct with you, but that's all right. Because real good friends will encourage you to talk. They'll encourage you to cry and argue with God until you get health in your heart. Choices to make too, and that's very confusing. Rather than having, say, a fork in the road, you have like a multi-lane highway of choices to wade through. The decisions may not be easy, and you might be considering plans that you never thought of, never even dreamed of. But my advice would be to be like Nina and just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Your perseverance will pay off because you will learn new things about yourself. And it's going to lead you to a place where you can understand your limits and you can embrace what is called embracing the gift of limits. Ultimately, we become aware of new realities. And some types of losses bring huge limitations. Quickly, you and I realize that the gift of life is just as it describes. Humans are like the grass with which the wind blows over it and then it is gone. You and I are dying. There's a definite limit to our days. When my mother was in the last stages of cancer, and this is a stage where morphine is the only answer, my mother's daughter spoke wisdom to my father. He was a pastor to him. And he said, no one guarantees that you will live a certain number of days. That truth really hurt when we were facing death. In addition, we're also limited in our intellect and our culture, our physical appearance, our physical health, our financial resources. And we think that we can do so many things when we set off in life. Scazzero's best words in this chapter are this: our egos tend to be so inflated, we act as if we were God. Often we have larger fantasies and wishes for ourselves than our lives can support. We plan our lives for fair weather conditions, and we don't budget for a storm. Who do you know that plans for a premature death? Or the complications that come from that? Nobody does that. Some of us will need to let go of some dreams. And that's okay. God has plans to prosper you and give you a hope and a future. What are the limitations you have experienced so far in your life? Have they made you bitter? Are you jealous or envious of another's opportunities, their position at work, their wealth, their relationships? Does someone else have your dream? Job had some self-pity, and he did some comparisons too. He complained about the wicked that continued to live in prosperity while he was struggling in a pit with no hope of recovery. Nearing the end of his book, Job says of God, who can dissuade him? What he desires, that he does. Job realizes his limitations before God. He realizes he's just a man. But Job's mind itself, that's the limitation. He can't get his mind around his unjust suffering. And there's just this wedge stuck between him and God. You and I become aware of our limitations slowly too. But if we choose, we can surrender knowing that God will again bring strength and support after a time of suffering. This surrender brings us to another stage in Scazzero's 5 principles, and that's climbing the ladder of humility. And you might wonder, well, what does humility have to do with all this grief stuff? I'm going to look into the life of Job towards the end. After 38 chapters of silence, God breaks this silence and he speaks, and it's like, wow, you showed up. This is great. And when God finally does address Job, the man is completely leveled. If humility could be described as being flattened like a pancake, this is it. Listening on their conversation in chapter 40, the Lord said to Job, "Will the one who contends with the Almighty correct him?" Job answers very humbly, "I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more." The bitter man, he's now speechless and he's humble. He's been seen by God in a very special way. He's been seen through by God. And his presence of self has been reduced to nothing. Job's second response to God is this: "I know you can do all things. No plan of yours can be thwarted. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and I repent in dust and ashes." You know, there are various ways to describe humility. And I could bring out the Webster's Dictionary and read that for you. But in the context of this story of Job, I think it means just simply this: letting go of a right to a particular and perfect life, and accepting that God's plans, regardless of what they are, or what they could mean, are the best for you. Where are you on the path to humbling yourself with these hurtful, perhaps, circumstances in your own heart? Are you holding on to a belief that He is incapable of taking those messy parts of your life and making them brand new? I am absolutely convinced that if God can create the universe, and I do believe that He did, I believe that He can recreate your heart. Job provides a precious verse that says, "He wounds, but He binds up. He strikes, but His hands heal." God's world is designed with inherent flaws. And we're going to live through this life and we're going to get hurt at different times. But there's no intention on God's part to leave you there. He wants to bind you up. He wants to heal you. Scazzero's fifth stage. Grieving is moving towards letting the old birth the new. I met with a friend of mine last week, and she shared with me that in order to embrace a new dream, you need to let go of an old one. Now, Job had some ideas about God prior to his suffering, about how his relationship with God should work, and he needed to learn some humility. But he didn't get there easily. Nobody does. Nobody does. If your losses are significant, they will require that you tie up some loose ends before you can move on. My girlfriend Julie, from public school, we were close when we were young, and we kind of went into different girl camps. I haven't spoken to her since high school. I've learned a lot in the last 10 years. And I think I need to just pick up the phone and see if she's all right.